Hi, this is Shane with The Rational Trader. It is Sunday the 17th. I've been dealing with a lot of illness in the house here, so daily and weekly videos have been few and far between here the last couple weeks. The flu managed to hit us, everybody in succession, even though we all got the flu shot, so not completely effective. In any case, we are going to take a look here at experiments I've been running on CL and GC in the live environment for the last couple of weeks, and then sort of how everything looks in aggregate, and then talk about what I'm planning on doing here and over the next, let's see, really for the rest of March. And I'm off for a week in April, and then I think we'll put a stake in the ground in April and then make a decision on how to move forward on really sort of the two paths that I see. So let's start with the trade activity log. This is all symbols, non-sim, so all live accounts since February, beginning of February, as we started this the current set of experiments, and it's basically scratch. Though much of this loss is driven. It was up at plus 1,000. Much of it's driven by what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. So we're going to take a look at that specifically and understand what's happening there. The bigger problem here, and the thing that I think is going to drive the decision on which fork in the road to take, is the number of trades. Okay, so you'll notice this is a lot of trades in total across four markets. It's not that much, but when you put them all together, if you're not making forward progress, then the costs will just eat you alive. You will notice that it's been declining here. That's because I've been specifically working on that. Though there is another factor there as well. So we're going to we'll talk about that as we look at each market. So let's look at each market individually. This is a weekly view, by the way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, the last 7 weeks. So let's look at the euro first, 6EH9. Now, and we want to switch to daily here, daily. Now, I made a little bit of an error last week. Again, this is illness-driven, really, because I should have been switching to the M contract. So it's difficult to assess the number of contracts last week and the result. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to run a replay to see what would have happened with the M contract. I was accidentally running the H. I needed to switch because the contract rolled. But nonetheless, let's just take a look at this in general and see. What we see here is, starting from up here to down here, you're basically getting nickel and dimed. Okay. But it's okay because it's one trade, two trades. This is the only day here that looks really bad to me. 5 trades and $25. There's a lot of trades for not much forward progress. And then I guess this would be the second one where 4 trades, but you ended up down on the day. For the most part, one or two trades a day seems okay to me. All right. The other days when you're taking more trades, you're generating a nice profit here and here. That would be okay. The dilemma here is that in total that this is a lot of trades. All right, and we're not getting these pops here as spread more evenly would be the way to think about it. I'd be willing to accept less of a pop if it's spread more evenly. The problem is that because it's sort of so few and far between, since you're running a bunch of different markets, if they all line up like this, the aggregate loss can get pretty high. It can be or even the aggregate scratch, your net loss is pretty high because all of these trades cost money to execute. So this is what I'm thinking about, is that we switch to, let's get choosier and more conservative and spread to multiple markets. And what I think is that we actually didn't get choosy enough or conservative enough and spread to multiple markets. So what's going to happen here is either we're going to get even choosier and keep doing multiples, or focus more in on just one or two markets instead of a lot. That's what I think is going to happen here. And so what I've been doing is working through, sort of what drives a high number of trades, and what is the impact of multiple markets versus a single market. So let's continue here. This is the euro, so plus 860 on what looks like a reasonable number of trades. Here's the yen. The yen has less movement, and you see less profit. It's more in line with what we'd like to see. You get these pops that are not just one cluster. All right. Otherwise, you're just kind of getting nickel and dimed here. All right. Number of trades is reasonable, 1 or 2 a day. That looks okay to me. Again, because this looks like this is a fairly long stretch here. If those long stretches line up together with the other markets that you're trading, if you're trading multiple markets, then that gets pretty ugly. So you may be better off focusing on a single market and trading more contracts as opposed to focusing on multiple markets and trading a single contract. But in general, there's not an obvious problem here in terms of, oh my gosh, we're taking too many trades. Okay, now this is using, we'll talk about the analytical method this is using to choose the behaviors in a minute, and then contrast it with what's been going on in gold and oil in the last couple of weeks. Let's take a look at oil now. Oil's split across this time period, so let's look at the H first. So this was, so in mid-February we changed to the J contract. So this is scratching through that first couple of weeks. Number of trades looks okay. This is not bad, all right. But you're not making, you don't have any real nice days in here. So ultimately, that's going to eat you up, all right. And then when we look at the what happened here is at the beginning of March. So the last 2 weeks, I've been doing something else in terms of analyzing the data and choosing the codes, and I've been doing that and then testing that live in gold and oil. So let's take a look at oil here now. The last couple of weeks, that's the J contract. So again, starting 215 here. And that's not done well at all, right? You've got, it's not excessive here in terms of the number of trades, but you're getting nickel and dimed, and you're never ever getting a decent day to make up for it. All right, with what I've been doing really since here that I switched to a different approach. So that's actually down 200 across 2 weeks. It's not bad, actually. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's happening here, and then the test that I'm going to continue through the next couple of weeks, and then make a decision on what to do starting in April, or really once I'm back from vacation in April. Gold is the problem here. So again, this number of trades looks okay to me. All right. So, but you have the same problem, right? You're getting nickel and dimed a bit, and then if that lines up with all these other markets that you're also getting nickel and dimed on, that ends up being a lot. All right. You're scratching. Right. We saw the total on all markets, but you have to pay for all these trades. So ultimately I'm not making any forward progress. All right. So let's take a look at gold. Gold was a real problem for the last couple weeks. GCJ9. And that total number since January is just ugly. Let's look at it from the beginning of March. So this is where most of it is. Do you see the last couple weeks I've been running this test? Bunch of max loss days in a row. In fact, you're supposed to, let's see, where's the week break? You're supposed to stop right there, and then so you wouldn't take these losses and then start again here. But nonetheless, you can see most of that is just this stretch here where it looks like the experiment I was running is just miserable for gold. The dilemma here that I have is that when I look at the trades, and I look at the gold market, I got nicked a lot, and it makes it hard because if you're executing a trade and it's just wrong, like the system says get long, you get long, but the market is just collapsing, and it's obvious that there's something wrong. Here it's tougher because we're taking trades and then getting nicked, and what that means is that I'm getting it right in terms of what to do, get long or get short. But just the random price variation is you're getting me, with the stop being as tight as it is. So when we're trying to use this somewhat surgically precise entry with a really tight stop, you can easily get hurt by normal price variation. It's like Brownian motion of price in the market. And so this makes it hard in terms of evaluating, well, what I did here in this experiment, that net result is terrible. But when you look at what happened, well, okay, I got nicked a lot. You're clearly doing the right thing. Should you use a better entry, use a slightly bigger stop? What should you do? It's a little tricky to work that out. All right. All right. So here is the change I made in gold and oil, and then we'll talk about what I'm doing next and how that actually applies to the NASDAQ as well. So let's close this, and then I need to bring up this. So when we look at the analytical process, this is what we started with. This was going back 6 months, training the model on data through T minus 6 months, and then break up that data into weekly buckets and look for common behaviors, and then use those behaviors. These are the action codes in the trading. And this is what I started off with and generated pretty positive results, though it was only for oil at the time. That was in December. Okay. After that, we went wide and more conservative, and started and did some other experiments on using less data. And now we are, let's see, in fact, do I have that here? No. Okay. So what we did in January was we did the same thing, but with only 3 months of data. And so there's two concerns with this approach, even though it generated some positive results for oil in December. The first concern is that I'm making predictions off the model chain through June, so that model is getting older and older and older as I run this simulation forward through time. So model degradation is a concern. How relevant is that model to market behavior in this bucket versus one that is closer to it in time? That's one concern. The other concern is, the market will go through periods where it has a fairly defined characteristics. So when the market is, it's only climbing basically, or it's only falling, or it's really choppy. And so the worry is, or the concern is, that by using 6 months worth of data, you can easily find yourself out of touch with the current market behavior. All right. So what I took the same approach, and I did this for just 3 months instead of 6 months. I did it in January, and the results were basically miserable. This approach here, it has an elegance that I like, because we train the model on data, and then we show the model data it has never seen, and run simulations on the predictions it would make, and then analyze those predictions. Okay. What what I did more recently was I said, okay, well, what if I did that same idea, but I only did it for the last, or rather, I took the model from 6 weeks ago, and I ran predictions on it over the last, let's see, it would be weeks 3 through 6. So four weeks of predictions that are simulated, analyze that data, and then run it on the last 2 weeks and see how that simulation applies. So look for common behaviors in weeks weeks that are T minus 3 through 6, and then take those common behaviors that you find and run a simulation on the last couple of weeks and see what that looks like. This is an enormous amount of work because you have to basically, you want to do that for every week and then go back in time and see how well that works. And it turns out that it doesn't do any better a job than the 6-month view. It's more current, but because the markets have an element of randomness in them, the actual predictive ability is it doesn't appear to be good enough to make up for the fact that you're running your predictions across a lot less days. So that's this didn't work out very well. So then what I've closed on doing, it took me a couple of weeks to figure it out, that I started on gold and oil, is a little bit of a different approach, and that's described here, where instead of trying to analyze the output of the predictions that the system makes, just look at the patterns that are matched after the model's been trained and identify those behaviors that the machine is finding. Okay, so this is what I've been working towards the last couple of weeks in gold and oil, and either it doesn't work very well, and that's why gold was had such a poor performance, or I've gotten it to a point here where it'll be useful. We're going to find that out over the next couple of weeks. So what we're doing here is, and I need to explain one key thing that we haven't gotten to yet. What we're doing here is we're taking, for this week, take the model that's been trained on data through last Friday, so the absolute most current model, and run it for every single code on the data for the last 5 weeks, and then analyze which codes did well, which behaviors did well. That data file looks something like this. Let me show you. So give you an idea. It'll make it a little more concrete. I need this Excel spreadsheet. So this is the output of that exercise, where it shows for every day that you take a trade, that code shows up as a prediction what happened in both directions. So this is on February 11th. There was a 141. It made 22 ticks. It was a long. If you scroll down to the end of the time period, you'll get February 11th again, but this time it'll be for shorts. Down here somewhere. Yeah, right there. All right. So you start over again, and you say, okay, well, how did all those codes do in the other direction? And you just do that for every single combination of code and direction. All right. So we take the model. We say, show me what your prediction would have been for every single bar, and then we simulate what the results were, and then we look at those results. This is an intermediate file that shows, okay, this is what the system predicted and what the output, what would have happened if you'd taken that prediction. So this has, I think, something like 600 rows in it. Yeah, 626. So 625 across 5 weeks are the bars that generated some kind of prediction. to do something. So what we do is we take that data and then we say, all right, well, show me, show me the cases where I had, break it up into weekly buckets, and then show me a certain trade quality that I see a certain number of times in a certain number of buckets. So if you've got, say, some break long, and it generates a minimum, is it a minimum? Yeah. So it generates a minimum level of profit in the simulation, and you see that minimum level more than once in more than one of these buckets. Each of these is a weekly bucket here. Then that's a candidate to use. All right, and the key value to, or the key knob or dial to turn is trade quality. All right, and so this is what I've been working towards with Golden Oil, and now I've got it to a point where I think it solves the last key problem that is in the way here. So when you do this, and that problem is this: when you do this analysis, okay, analyze predictions in each time bucket, it's very easy to curve fit. All right, so it's easy as a human to do that analysis to go, well, this particular code did well, so I'm going to include it. And that gives me what looks like a better result. And what we want is a completely mechanical way to identify what worked well and what didn't, and then use that without any human input that is related to this is the standard hope and greed and fear and excitement that pollutes our choices when it comes to trading. And so that's what I've got now. I have a set of programs that run that take that file you saw and say, okay, using a weekly sized bucket, this ER threshold represents the trade quality. And what it basically means is that in aggregate, in total, that behavior, that action code, I require it to be a minimum of 8 ticks profit per trade. Okay, and frequency is I have to see it more than once, basically. All right, across this 5-week time period. And so you run this program, and it gives you this output. And you got to be careful now with this output because it's different than what we've been using. Before we would run this, and you'd actually have this profit number is intended to be predictive, and can be used to say, okay, well, this set of codes has this potential. You can't do that here because we're using a model that has seen. We're using a model that has seen all of this data. Okay, so you expect that number to be good. It should be good. All right, because the machine learning system has seen the data. Instead, what we're doing here is we're trying to identify which patterns is it clearly finding. Can it see more clearly? So it's a way to separate the signal from the noise. All right, so what we care about is this here. What is the actual total system quality efficiency ratio? 6.42 is the answer here. All right, so what I did is I required, for each individual code, I required a minimum of quality of 8 ticks per trade in aggregate, seen at least twice in at least 2 buckets. But there's 4 buckets in the system, so it could be those codes that show up as in the analysis. It could be that in those other 2 buckets they did terrible. All right, so we have to run it against the whole system. And The end result is that if I used these codes long and these short, only one short, that's interesting. That's the aggregate system quality. And this is the other key right here, the number of trades per day. These are the two things I'm looking at. 6.42 is the ER, and trades per day 1.5. I want to see this number as higher, and I want to see trades per day lower. Okay. The rest of this is not useful in this instance because we basically never see a risk factor that's going to be out of line here given what we're doing. Since we're using a model that's seen the data, we should never have a case where the risk factor shows some crazy numbers. So this is not useful information here compared to how we use it when we're using the model to make predictions on data it's never seen before. This is the key difference. All right. So what I do then is that doesn't require any human input at all. It just change this value, and it's very easy. You just keep increasing it until you hit a threshold and things just drop. All right. So this was the threshold for oil. Let's just do it and see. Here, let me snap this so we can easily refer back to it. Hang on, grab that. So this is the 782 parameter. You can see that right there. Okay, so let's move this aside. Let's change it now to 79. Okay, I require a higher quality, and then we'll run this. And this will take about a minute or so to run. So I'll probably pause the video. You can see it's gone and it's found the codes. All right, that meet that criteria, and now it's running them to see what the output looks like. All right, so let's pause here until it's done. It takes less than a minute, but a minute's a long time when you're just sitting here waiting. Okay, so there's the result 792. It's identical, which means that this is the 782 right here. Here's 792. It means that all of these codes that showed up actually have a higher threshold than 8. So let's take it up to 10 and see. All right, where is the line is kind of what we're looking for here. Where is the line where we suddenly we don't find any trades because there aren't any that meet that level of quality. Okay, so we're running this again. I'm going to pause again while we wait for it to run. All right, so there's the run using a trade quality of 10, and it's the same. So what it means is that I'm just walking up until I run out of trades. So now let's take it to 11. Oh, here, let me. You can see me change that value. Ultimately, what I do is set it up to do this automatically, but it's useful here to see it run manually. And what you can do is while we wait for that, you can get a clue as to if you're going to have a problem or not, because the first thing it does is goes and it finds the number of codes that meet that quality criteria. You can see there's only 3 now. All right, so this is the frequency, the count 2. All right, so it only 3 long codes showed up in 2 buckets and no short codes. So what I know already is that 11 is too high of a value. All right, and so you can see that down here. We dropped to 0.71. The ER goes up, so the overall system quality goes up. The number of trades went way down. What's not clear to me yet is, okay, which one do I want? Do I want this one here, or do I want the 710-2? Do I want more trades? And I think the answer there is where that fork in the road comes in. So it's a case where if I want to trade multiple markets, I probably choose this value for all of my multiple markets. Choose the place where I basically get only the best and not that many trades. Okay, so there's going to be, you would expect there to be multiple days in a row where you don't see a trade in that market. And if you're trading multiple markets, that's okay. If you're trading just one market, it's not, right? There's a very human element here where you're willing to take more trades, and which equates to more risk if you're trading just a single market. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 7-10-2 in oil, okay, for this week, and then what'll end up happening here is, based upon the results over the next couple of weeks in gold and oil, make a decision on is it reasonable to use this approach on multiple markets, or are you still getting too many trades for not enough benefit, and you either need to go to the more conservative level. So in this case, that's the trade quality of 11. Or you need to not trade multiple markets and focus more on, bring that overall trade quality down so you get more trades off, but you're not putting yourself in a position to get nickel and dime to death on a bunch of different markets all at the same time. Okay, so I'll end up using these codes this week, all right, which I don't recommend for members to do, because this is very much an experiment. Okay. And I have to do this. I have to do this live in order to get a real answer. So that we do the same thing for gold, right? So gold, here's 782. It's 2.5 trades a day, and it's at 6.81. Let's run that at 9. Okay. And what's interesting about this approach is that because we're only using very recent data, it's potentially something you could apply to the NASDAQ. So the problem with the NASDAQ is that so much of the data that's used for training is happened during just incredibly volatile times, that it's very difficult to have any confidence that you didn't just try to train the system on randomness and on random movement, and now you're applying that random movement, or the analysis of that random movement to the market. You could see in gold. Okay, so 7.9 looks okay. Let's snap this. It's over here. I need a new one. So let's hang on to that. We'll look at 7.10 now, and then we'll do the same thing for NASDAQ. And you can see where we're headed here. What we want to find that point where our requirement for quality is so high that no codes show up, or very few codes show up, and that's the line that you need to decide which side you're on that line. So for oil, it was, what was it? It was 10. So 10 is 1.5 trades a day on a reasonable number of codes, mostly longs. So that clearly the patterns of the last 5 weeks that we can see are long. Or is it 11, where it's much less, all right, but presumably of much higher quality. Okay. So where is that line in gold is the question. We're running it for 10. It's the same, all right? So what that means is that all of the trades that met this criteria also, they were even better than just 9. Nine's the minimum number here. So let's take it higher. We're just going to keep going until we run out until our trade quality gets high enough that it's not useful. Then we found that line. All right. CL was 10 and 11, and what gold will be whatever it turns out to be. I'll pause while we wait for this. Though it is curious, I'll say that I'm running this on my trading computer, because it's the computer I'm set up to record on, and all the charts are on here. Though I actually do this work on a development computer, which is newer. This system, this trading computer, is from 2013. So this is a pretty old system, right? it does it's good to use that just to make sure that it can actually do the work that it needs to do in terms of making the predictions. It has no trouble at all, even though it's 5 years old now, 6 years old. But it does. It's interesting to note just that this takes a lot longer, right? It's that took about a minute while I was chatting here. It takes like 20 seconds on the development computer. It's a lot faster. Okay, so you can see we found our line. Okay, so it happens to be the same for gold, where as soon as you say I require 11 as my trade quality minimum threshold, the total number of codes you get drops dramatically, and the trades per day goes down. Okay, so again, which side of the line are we on, 10 or 11? Depends on, I think that will depend on how many markets are you trading simultaneously. Okay, so now I'll be running 10 then for gold this week. And then I'll basically do this analysis again next week using the last 5 weeks of data. And then I'll use those codes. And we'll do this for a couple weeks till we get to the end of March. Let me run this. And then from that we can make a decision on okay, well what to do next. All right. So if this generates decent results over the next couple of weeks, then okay, let's put in the effort to do a formal analysis of that approach for the last 2 months. That's a lot of work. It's really labor intensive to create all of the files that you need to run the simulations to produce this analysis. I have all the models because I create models every week, but I don't have the data prepped to do the simulation. So that's the part that's really labor intensive. Or do we go the other route? Do we go, all right, well, what we should do is instead take the approach of get even choosier. Use when we cross that threshold of quality level where we dramatically see the number of behaviors drop, use that instead, and do the work to understand is that the best approach. And as I'm sitting here just talking this out, it's clear to me that it's once you do the work to set up one, you can easily do both. So it's kind of silly that you don't have to make a choice. We'll end up doing both. The question becomes, is there value? So if I do this for the next couple weeks and don't see decent results, what I'm looking for is a low number of trades, and either I don't mind seeing days with no trades at all. That would be fine. But if we just continue to see this kind of sort of nickel and diming without decent pops, then there's no use doing it this way. There's no use taking those trades if you can get the same result on far fewer. So that's I think that becomes the question that needs to be answered. So here's this is what I'll be running here for gold this week. Here, the sets of codes. What's interesting, an interesting observation, is that the machine learning system is finding more signals that are valid in gold than in oil over the last 5 weeks. You see that? It's easier to identify those patterns. I don't know what that means. It's just an observation. So for NASDAQ, it's the same thing. Well, let's just go, let's say 7, let's start with 10, since it seems to be the magic number. And what that produces is, this level, 6.7. Look at the trades per day. 5.4. That's a big number compared to what we've been seeing, and that's because when you look at the NASDAQ, it's that's the wrong one. This one here. The volatility is still just through the roof here. The yellow box here is just insane levels of volatility. This is the average daily range using a 10-day average, and anything anything above the yellow line is scary, and above the red line is beyond scary, and way up here is just it's insanity to be trying to trade that. And so it's still really high. All right. So it's not surprising you're seeing lots of trades. The question becomes, okay, well, if we just, by looking at just the last few weeks, is there some level of predictability on what's currently happening in the market or not? The worry is that you've trained the model on this craziness, which is basically random, and now you're trying to apply it to the market, and that's just foolish, right? No one can predict the roll of the dice. All right, so what will be interesting, I'm going to run NASDAQ and SIM using this same approach, and this shows at a 10 quality level a high enough number of trades per day that I'm worried, because I want that number low. The ER is about the same that we've been seeing, right? 6.7. This is 8.29 in gold, 6.42 in oil. Let's take NASDAQ up to 11. I think this was the threshold as well. That's interesting that it's always 10 and 11. Let's run this, and I will pause while we wait for that to run. Or actually, what we can do is we can look here real quick and see. You can see you're only going to get 2 long codes and 1 short code, because this count column is the number of buckets that I see codes show up with that quality level. So you're only going to get 198 and 293 long and 122 short. So it's very clearly also the lines at 10 and 11. Okay. And so what I'm going to do here now is I'm curious to see what the actual trades per day is for this. It drops in a fairly similar way. It's like 1/4 of what was there before. The ER did not get dramatically better. Like gold, you saw it get better. That may not be accurate. It may have been 8. I'm confusing oil and gold here. Still a good number. 6.6 is fine. But you can see the line is right there. That's curious that it's the same for all 3. That's interesting. In any case, so what I'm going to be doing now is running NASDAQ. Will stay in SIM because I still think it's too dangerous. But I can run it now with the codes that show up when I require this level, this quality level. All right. And then we'll do that for the next couple weeks live in gold and oil, in SIM, in the NASDAQ, and then see what we learned during that couple of weeks. And then in the meantime, I having talked it out here for you all, it seems clear that I need to give some thought on how to automate the what would be a back test of this approach. So it's non-trivial, again, because I have the models, but I don't have the data prepped correctly, and that's a lot of effort to create all that week by week, right? Because what you want to do is you want to exactly simulate what would have happened. Say, go back to last week, take the model from March 8th, run this analysis, and then run a simulation on what happened, from March 11th through March 15th. All that's doable. It's just work. So what we're doing here is what I'm doing is figuring out where is the best place to apply my resources in terms of time to figure out how best to move forward. The end result will be, it's a real long video here. The end result will be either, okay, this is a better way to do it, and it's completely devoid of any human input. So there's no possibility to let human emotion get in the way of choosing which behaviors to look for, which codes to trade, or we just go back to the original method, which was, where did it go? The original method, which used 6 months worth of data, and the task then is to decide, okay, well, do I want to use lower risk factors and trade multiple markets, or just pick the market that has the most potential and focus on it with a higher risk factor? All right, because again, what the goal here is got to reduce the number of trades because what we see is that you can take this defensive posture and then do well when the nice days come along, but when you're trading multiple markets, they can very easily all line up, and then while you're not losing money at a gross level, you have to pay for all those trades, so the commissions are going to eat you alive. Okay, all right. So we're getting close here to what I think is a final answer, and we will see. Probably once we get out of March, we'll make that decision in April on how to move forward. Because we've analyzed how to use it using 6 months worth of data. Now we're analyzing how to use it using just the most recent data, and then we'll make a decision one way or the other on how to move forward. Okay, my voice is hoarse here. So that's it for now. So I'll for members, the models will be out shortly for you to download, and then we'll see what the results here are of this experiment over the next couple of weeks. Stop.